Welcome to Dark Truths, Religion Uncovered, where faith meets fracture, and sacred empires crumble under the weight of their own belief. We often hear the story of Israel's exile as a simple tale of punishment. They disobeyed, so God disciplined them. But what if the story is far more profound, more unsettling, and ultimately, more hopeful? Let's journey back in time, to the moment when the flames consumed Solomon's temple and the Ark of the Covenant. The very throne of God on earth vanished into the mists of history. In that smoke and chaos, the prophets didn't just weep for a fallen city. They wept because heaven itself seemed to fall silent. The direct line to the divine was cut. For a people whose entire identity was built on a covenant relationship with God, this silence was more terrifying than any army. It felt like abandonment. Imagine praying into a void, offering sacrifices to an empty sky. The world, once filled with divine presence, suddenly felt hollow. This wasn't just a political crisis, it was a spiritual apocalypse. The core question became, where is God when his house is in ruins and his people are in chains? Is he angry? Or worse, is he gone? This idea of divine silence has haunted thinkers for centuries. Yet, a fascinating counter-narrative emerged, one that reframes this apparent abandonment. Theologians from St. Augustine, in the 4th century, to Rabbi Abraham, Joshua Hessel, in the 20th century explored a radical idea that God's withdrawal is not neglect. It's a form of revelation by absence. It's a paradox that sits at the heart of faith. How can an absence reveal anything? Think of it like a master teacher. During the lesson, the teacher is present, guiding, and explaining. But during the test, the teacher steps back. They become silent. This silence isn't a sign of abandonment, it's an expression of trust. It's the moment the student must internalize the lessons and apply them on their own. The teacher's silence forces growth, self-reliance, and a deeper understanding. God's silence, these thinkers argued, was Israel's test. It was an invitation to grow up spiritually, stripped of the temple, the priesthood, and the land. The people of Israel had to find God in new ways. They could no longer rely on the external rituals and physical structures. They had to find God within their own hearts, in their communities, and in the text of the scriptures they so carefully preserved. The synagogue was born from the ashes of the temple. Prayer became a personal conversation, not just a public ritual. Faith became portable. It was no longer tied to a specific location but to a people, wherever they might wander. This forced evolution was painful, but it was also transformative. The silence of God compelled them to listen more closely to his written word. The great sages and rabbis emerged during this period, developing a rich tradition of interpretation and law that would sustain Judaism for millennia. In a way, by withdrawing his manifest presence, God forced his people to discover his spirit in every aspect of life. He wasn't gone. He was just speaking a new language, the language of resilience, of community, and of a faith that could survive the impossible. This ancient story speaks directly to our modern lives. How many of us have faced moments of profound silence, a crisis where our prayers seem to hit the ceiling and fall back unanswered, a period of doubt where faith feels distant and abstract? In these moments, it's easy to feel abandoned, to believe that God has turned his back. But perhaps, like with ancient Israel, these moments of divine silence are not punishments. Perhaps they are invitations. They are invitations to dig deeper, to move beyond a faith that depends on signs and wonders, and to build a more resilient, internal connection. It's in the silence that we learn to listen with our hearts. It's in the darkness that we learn to become a light for ourselves and others. The kingdom may have seemed abandoned, but the silence was not an ending. It was the necessary quiet before the dawn of a new, more profound understanding of the divine. It teaches us that sometimes God's greatest gift is his absence, because it forces us to finally find him everywhere. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the heart of history and faith. See you next time.